Hello, and thank you for joining us for the celebration of 50 years of Oziana, the publication of the International Wizard of Oz Club, written by our members and friends. I'm Susan Johnson, one of the members of secretaries for the club. This is the third part of Umbrella Island in Oz from the 1996 issue of Oziana. The story was written by Ruth Wara and illustrated by Ken Cope, a former computer illustrator for Disney. In the first part of the sequel to Speedy and Oz, Ivan Mountbank, a carnival showman who operates a dishonest Wheel of Fortune game, manages to reach Umbrella Island while escaping from the sheriff, who has caught him cheating the carnival goers. True to the nature, he has convinced King Scissoroo, Kachuka, Bambula, and several others that he is the king of the United States. And worse, that he has also put a spell on Princess Garita, who is now engaged to him. Pansy the Watch Cat, however, is not impressed. Johnny Consul, a young carnival goer, is carried off by the ladder, dangling from the island while trying to rescue a pet chameleon named Pickle. And he finally also manages to reach the island, where he's greeted by Terry Bubble, the live dinosaur skeleton, who thinks at first that Speedy has returned. Johnny tries to convince the king and his counselors that Ivan is lying, since the USA has no king. He is, however, locked in the tower for his trouble with Pickle. Terry Bubble, Pickle's gigantic cousin, is chained outside. In the second installment, the real Speedy, now William Harmstead, all grown up, contacts Johnny's parents and offers to help. Dorothy wishes him to Oz and then transports both of them by magic belt to Umbrella Island. Speedy tries to convince Scissoroo that Ivan is not the king of the United States, but the spell that Ivan has put on the king and his counselors is too strong for him, and both he and Princess Dorothy are locked up in the tower, along with Johnny, Waddy the wizard, and Terry Bubble chained outside. Meanwhile, Pickle the chameleon has gone to convince Pansy the Watch Cat to help out the prisoners. After considerable confusion, they head for the wizard's laboratory to find something to get the heroes out of the tower. And now we join Ivan and Kachuka in conversation. While Pansy and Pickle had been coming to an agreement, Ivan and Kachuka had come into the room and were standing by the window talking earnestly. Pansy, who did not like either of them, stepped back into the shadow of the throne. She and the little lizard listened attentively. Your Majesty, Kachuka made an obsequious bow. It is wonderful to know that you are going to marry our princess and will soon be king of Umbrella Island, as well as king of the United States. I suppose so, Ivan muttered discontentedly. Of course, Umbrella Island is small peanuts compared to the United States. Of course, Kachuka agreed in his oily voice. Even Oz is small in size when compared to the United States, though of course in power, there is no comparison. I want to know about that, Ivan nodded. This Dorothy who suddenly appeared out of thin air, do I understand correctly that she is a princess of Oz? Exactly. And she can travel through the air by means of magic? It was actually Ozma's magic. Dorothy is only a little girl from Kansas. However, Ozma herself is a fairy, and the Wizard of Oz and Glinda are both powerful musicians. They are much more powerful than our own wizard. So that if I were to marry Ozma instead of Garita, I would be king of a much more powerful kingdom. Well, yes, but Ozma has turned down many suitors. Yes, but Ivan glanced down at the can of DDT Blitz in his hand and felt the agreed bill tray in his pocket. Kachuka, knowing nothing about the agreed bill tray, but he understood Ivan's glance at the DDT Blitz. Ozma's magic is much more powerful than a can of spray. You wouldn't have a chance against the magic belt. Ivan was not so sure. It was the magic belt which Dorothy used to transport herself here, but something went wrong. Come, Kachuka, my friend. I'm a man who can climb and rise high. You help me, you can rise along with me. Kachuka hesitated, but after all, it was Scissoroo who was his king. He owed Ozma no loyalty and saw no harm to old Scissor in Ivan's plan. and it might even lead to his own personal gain. Of course I will help you, Your Majesty agreed with a toothy smile. Good. The first step is to visit Wattie's laboratory and see what magic he has which might help us. Pansy moved swiftly. She gave no sign to betray her presence. But as Ivan and Kachuka left the room, she raced swiftly to the stairs leading to Wattie's tower room and turned the knob on the balustrade at the bottom. Instantly, she and Pickle were at the top of the stairs. Good thing I know Wattie's shortcut, she laughed as she hopped up on the wizard's table. He's too chubby to climb all those stairs. That was smart of you, Pansy, said Pickle. We're lucky for the fine head start you gave us. What does Wattie want? Demanded Pansy, flattered, but all business now. We only have a few minutes before those two conspirators get up here. Pickle seized the opportunity to jump off Pansy's back. He wants 2 spray cans. One will turn iron into wax. The other will put people to sleep. Here they are, Pansy said, but they're too big for us, Pickle. She took a spray can between her 2 front paws, but it was much too heavy for her to lift. We can't carry it. If we had time, I might roll it down the winding staircase. I don't think I could ever get it up the other tower to jail. Anyway, we don't have time. I hear Ivan and Kachuka's footsteps right now. Well, let's take what we can, Pickle urged. There's a cupboard full of magic over there, and the things in it look small. Look, here's a powder which says it puts people to sleep. I hope it works as well as the spray. And here's a chunk of wax. I don't know if they'll help much, Pansy said, but at least we can carry them. She clutched the chunk of wax between her teeth. Pickle dragged the packet of powder up onto Pansy's back. Ivan and Kachuka were already entering, but Pansy hid behind the door. While they had their backs turned, looking at magic, Pansy pattered to the top of the stairs, turned the knob on the top of the balustrade, and was immediately at the base of the stairway. She made her way quickly to the other tower. Dorothy was standing at the door, gazing down through the bars, and saw the cat toiling up the stairs of the prison tower. Here goes Pansy, she cried, and Pickle too. Pickle, cried Johnny in delighted relief. You're all right. Of course he is, poor Pansy. Why wouldn't he be? No particular reason, I guess, Speedy said, quickly darting a warning glance at Terry Bubble. And then he, Johnny, and Dorothy began to giggle helplessly. But, spluttered the perplexed dinosaur. Never mind that, commanded Wattie impatiently. The point is, did you get the sleeping and melt to wax sprays? No, evaded Pansy, somewhat nonplussed at the giggle, which she suspected was somehow directed at her. We couldn't carry the cans. But we did get sleeping and wax magic, added Pickle helpfully. Sniffed Wattie. Let's see now. Well, we actually did rather well indeed, all things considered. The wax is guaranteed to make anything glide smoothly, and this sleeping powder is the active element that I use in the sleeping spray. It doesn't work for more than a few minutes unless it's wet, of course, but I'm sure we can find a use for it, and perhaps for the wax as well. Very good indeed, my little friends. Pansy could help us again, I think, suggested Speedy. All she has to do is drop a bit of that sleeping powder stuff into Ivan's glass. If she can drop some into Kachuka's glass too, all the better. But it doesn't really matter, Wattie said quickly. Kachuka always agrees with the most important person present. Once Ivan is asleep, Kachuka won't give us any more trouble, and Scizoroo will do whatever Pansy suggests. I'll suggest that he comes straight up here and let you out, Pansy promised. Someone else is coming now, Johnny warned. He was leaning up against the bars, standing watch. Ivan and Kachuka appeared on the landing. Johnny quickly seized the wax and hid it in his pocket. Pickle sat on a little packet of sleeping powder. Well, what do you want? Wattie demanded. You have us shut up. You might as well leave us in peace. Ah, no, Ivan murmured. I've been learning about the magical land of Oz. I understand from the Kachuka that when Queen Ozma returns to the Emerald City, she's almost certain to miss Princess Dorothy and will look in the magic picture for her. Of course she will, Dorothy said proudly. You'll be sorry then. Not, Ivan said thoughtfully. If I can fix it so when she looks for you, she can't find you. Well, you can't, Dorothy said. The magic picture will show me wherever I am, and as soon as Ozma transforms me back to the Emerald City, I'll tell her about the trouble of Speedy, Johnny, and the rest, and how you deceived Scizoroo. That does not suit me. I have not yet perfected enough magic of my own to cope with the magic of Queen Ozma, the Wizard of Oz, and Glinda. Well, there's nothing you can do about it. But there is. Magic picture cannot show you if you are non-existent. Whitey gasped and Johnny gave a little scream, but Dorothy stood up proudly. We're not non-existent. It might be arranged. I have this spray of Whitey's, which is guaranteed to turn iron bars into wax. You, princess, are not as solid as an iron bar. It will turn you to wax. I can melt you. It doesn't work on princesses, Whitey said quickly. When I make a spray to melt iron, iron is what it melts. Then there is no harm trying, is there? No harm to me, that is. Lifting the spray can, Ivan pointed it toward the little girl. Several things then happened almost simultaneously. Dorothy ducked. Pickle grabbed the powder and leaped with it to a perch on Kachuka's long nose. Kachuka's indignant yelp startled Ivan, and Ivan sprayed his damaging mist into the empty air above Dorothy's head. Before either of the two cohorts could recover their wits, Pickle had torn open the packet and dispersed it into a powdery arc, which they promptly inhaled. They fell asleep where they stood. Pickle slid gently off Kachuka's nose as he too fell victim to the sleeping powder he'd inhaled. Ah, be jiggled, the stuff still works, explained Waddy proudly. Poor Pickle. Will he be all right, Waddy? Worried Johnny as he carefully made a nest in his pocket for the sleeping chameleon. He was so brave. Yes, he was, wasn't he? Chortled a proud Terry Bubble. Bravery runs in the family, you know. He'll be fine, Johnny. That powder can't hurt anybody. The problem is it can't keep anybody asleep for very long when dispensed dry. We better hurry out of here before they wake up. Grab that spray can, someone, said a rather shaken Dorothy. Let's spray the bars and escape. Speedy grabbed the can and sprayed. Oh no, he cried. It's all used up. Oops. Waddy mumbled his apologies. I saw no reason to keep it filled all the way up, he explained. After all, it was really only meant for display. Look at this, said Johnny excitedly. Some of that spray must have hit the bars of the door. These two bend almost far enough apart for me to slip between them. I knew that spray was good, Waddy said proudly. I just wish more of it hit these bars. They're still too stiff to bend properly, but they're almost far enough apart. This just isn't good enough, Waddy, snapped Pansy. We've got to leave now. No problem, beamed the Wizard of Umbrella Island. No problem at all. Do you have my chunk of magic wax, Johnny? Here it is. And Johnny quickly dished it out of his free pocket. Waddy rubbed it over the two softened bars. Give me a hand here, folks. He puffed as he puffed at one of the bars. Johnny joined Waddy. Speedy and Dorothy pulled away at the other, but neither budged any further than when Johnny had first tugged at them. Oh dear, grumbled the pudgy wizard. This is going to be uncomfortable, but here goes. With that, he somehow managed to force himself through what was clearly too small an opening for him. Told you that wax would make anything glide smoothly, he panted. I feel positively diced around that, exulted Terry Bubble as he watched the scene through the window. Don't you dare snort, vault, or spin, Terry Bubble, shouted Waddy, now on the other side of the cell door. You'll attract attention to us. Then, smiling through the bars at Speedy and the children, he motioned them to join him. We'll be back for you, Terry Bubble, promised Speedy as he slid into freedom, just as soon as we can be. Terry Bubble himself quite understood the importance of getting Dorothy out of Ivan's reach. The faithful fossil waved an encouraging claw as the others followed Waddy and Speedy. In two shakes of a dinosaur's tail, so to speak, our friends had all slipped easily through the bars. Where can we hide? Dorothy asked as they sped out the kitchen door, past the cabbages and parsley. The island is awfully small. There isn't any place we can hide for long, Waddy agreed, but the umbrella wood will shelter us for a while. And then, Waddy paused as they were safely in the shade of the first umbrella trees. He picked a parasol for Dorothy and umbrellas for Speedy and Johnny. Then he hurried them onward. Then, Waddy continued, we'll jump off. Remember, the reason we Umbrella Islanders always carry umbrellas is so that we can use them as parachutes. Dorothy and Johnny shuddered, but Waddy smiled encouragingly. Don't worry, The umbrella trees in our wood have been especially bred to produce excellent parachutes. Maybe we won't have to jump, Dorothy said hopefully. Maybe Ivan won't find us. Then Waddy shook his head. I think we should jump the first time we're over solid ground. If we wait till Ivan finds us, we'll have to jump no matter what, even if we're over the deadly desert of the monastic ocean. Much better to choose our time and jump over land. That makes sense, Dorothy admitted grudgingly. Certainly does, agreed Speedy quickly, as he remembered his experience jumping off the island with Waddy as they tested an umbrella for Terryville. They had ended up not only in the chilly waters of the Nonestic, but right between two fighting islands. By this time, the little group had come to the end of the wood. They were still 100 yards or more from the edge of the island. If they stepped out of the wood, they could easily be seen from the castle. Let's go ahead, Pansy suggested. I'm so small, I don't think Ivan can see me from the castle, but you can see me from here. I'll wave my tail when it's safe to jump. Then you must all run forward and get off before Ivan has a chance to catch you. This was agreed upon, and Pansy crept forward. After 15 minutes, she waved her tail, and the others ran for the edge. From somewhere behind them came a shout. Ivan had seen them and was running to intercept them. Run ahead and jump, Waddy shouted. I'll stop him. They dashed on. Speedy and Pansy jumped first. Donnie hesitated on the edge, but Dorothy had had more experience with magical appliances. After making sure that both umbrellas were properly opened, she took Johnny's hand and jumped. Johnny followed willy-nilly, Pickles still tucked safely away. The jerk was such that the two children had to let go of each other, and a current of air blew Dorothy away, leaving Johnny floating alone. Don't look down, Tiny voice warned calmly. It was Pickle, wide awake again and squinting cautiously up at Johnny. The presence of the tiny chameleon was somehow comforting to the little boy. For a moment after the long leap into space, the wind rushed past and almost tore the umbrella from Johnny's grip. And it was a good thing Pickle was deep in the boy's pocket, or he would surely have been blown away. Soon, however, air filled the umbrella and they floated slower and slower. Looking down carefully, Johnny saw a shiny tin castle. A freak of air brought Dorothy close again. That's the Tin Woodman's castle, she called. We'll be down in time for dinner. Oh, maybe not. We're drifting south. She glanced upward in the direction in which Umbrella Island was fast disappearing. Pansy and Speedy are going to land near us, I think, but I don't see Waddy. Waddy, as it happened, had not jumped. Ivan ran too quickly, and to keep him from catching Dorothy and the others, Waddy tackled him in what Speedy had once told him was a football tackle. Waddy, of course, was still suffering from the effects of DDT-less and the strain of sliding through the bars. While his tackle brought Ivan to the ground, it could not hold him. However, by the time Ivan had sprung to his feet, Dorothy and the rest of the group had jumped. Ivan hauled Waddy to his feet. You kept me from catching them, he snarled. How can you steer the island so as to scoop them up again? Since it always took the umbrellas several minutes to walk their owners to the ground, this was perfectly feasible. Waddy was about to return an indignant refusal when he reflected that if he did, Ivan would get someone else to do it. He pretended to agree, therefore, but as soon as he got his hands on the controls, he turned the island away. It was some time before Ivan realized that Waddy had no intention of picking up the Americans in Pansy. I've set the island on a course for Glinda's castle, Waddy said calmly. You can lock me up if you want, but you can't change the course. I've set the automatic controls. For a moment, he thought Ivan was going to lash out at him. Then anger gave way to reflection. I'll lock you up, all right, Ivan said, but he did not sound as angry as Waddy had expected. He shoved the still weak wizard into a dark room he had originally prepared for Dorothy. If that Princess Ozma looks for you in the magic picture, all she'll see is darkness, he smirked. Waddy stood perfectly still. He heard the key turn in the lock, but he could not see anything at all. There was a rustle in the room. He drew in his breath, hearing danger. Then there was a loud sob. Poor Rita's voice, I've been such a fool. The reason Ivan was not very upset at the discovery that Waddy had set the course of the island toward Glinda's castle was that he had been planning to go to Glinda's castle anyway. It had occurred to Ivan sometime previously that if he really wanted to make a success of his adventure, it was Ozma he should marry, not Garita. And Ozma was at Glinda's castle. He had wanted to put Dorothy out of the way first. Ironically, it had been Garita who had seemingly solved the problem for him. Either that day, Ivan, eager to learn more about his adversaries, had visited with Garita. I want you to tell me all you can about Oz, Ivan had said. Garita had laughed delicately, but Ivan, there are dozens of books of Austrian geography. It would take about 7 months to tell you all we know about Oz. Why, there must be 15 or 20 books about Princess Dorothy alone. How many are there about Speedy? 2. The Yellow Knight of Oz and Speedy and Oz. I'm the second. All the Umbrella Islanders are, including Cherry Bubble. Ivan sighed. I find this country very confusing. In America, not even live animals talk, let alone skeletons. That's what makes Oz and Umbrella Island so exciting. The thought of showing up in Ozma's magic picture is exciting too, but I don't like it. I'm trying to hide Dorothy so that Ozma won't see her and find out about me. Although Garita was still under the influence of the Gris Filtre, something about the direction of Ivan's conversation disturbed her. Why, Ivan, she said amusedly, we mustn't hurt Dorothy. Who says I mustn't? Anyway, I don't want to hurt her. I just want to keep Ozma from poking her nose into Umbrella Island's affairs. And if she looks for Dorothy in the picture, she will. Oh, Rita glanced down at the book to which she was anxious to return. Well, in that case, all you need to do is put her in a dark room. Then when Ozma won't have any way of knowing where the black square is. Ivan had leaped to his feet. Rita, my dear, you have solved the problem. I guess all that reading has done you some good. Garita smiled absently as she returned to her book. However, after a couple of paragraphs, she paused again and glanced toward her father, snoozing comfortably on the throne. For some reason, which she could not have explained, the little princess was beginning to feel very uncomfortable about her supposed engagement to Ivan. The truth was that the Gris Filtre was beginning to wear off. Like other obsolete magic, it was good only for 12 hours, and those 12 hours were almost up. Ivan, of course, knew nothing about the limitations of obsolete magic. He had dashed straight from the throne room to have a dark room prepared for Dorothy and was very surprised when Garita came in search of him. Ivan, the princess had exclaimed accusingly, something has gone wrong with my memory, but it's all right now. We aren't engaged at all. I don't know why we thought we were. Has your memory cleared up too? Ivan looked at Garita in consternation. Of course we're engaged, he exclaimed. But Garita had continued to shake her head stubbornly. I guess your memory hasn't cleared up yet, she sighed, but mine has. Why, Ivan, Daddy and I let you chain Cherry Bubble and put Dorothy, Speedy, and Little Boy in prison. I can't think how we could have ever agreed to that. I'll have to wake Daddy up and have him change his orders to the guards. She turned, but Ivan was too quick for her. Since there was nothing to drink handy in which to drop the dose, he could not get Garita to take another draft of the Gris Filtre. However, the spray can of DDT was still in his pocket. Without a qualm for his former fiancée, Ivan directed the spray can toward Garita and pushed the button. Garita went limp. She opened her mouth to scream for her father, but Ivan dragged her up the tower stairs where he intended to thrust her in with the other prisoners. As he reached the top of the stairs, he could see that the bars of the dungeon were gaping. The prisoners were gone. His attempt at recapturing them were, as we already know, futile. His only hope was to find Ozma before she returned home and looked in her magic picture. Ivan had already given Scissorwood another dose of the Gris Filtre before the confused monarch quite awoke up. Now he set the king to soothe the worried populace, which did not know quite what to make of the goings-on, but who could hardly go against their king. Ivan himself made his way to Wadi's laboratory. He hoped to find some more potent magic before reaching Garita's castle, but he soon discovered that Wadi did not make that kind of magic, which conquered kingdoms. The magic recipe book fascinated him, and he found a number of concoctions which might have been helpful. However, all the recipes either called for ingredients which he could not hope to obtain, such as caterpillar whiskers or moonbeam dust or required hours of stirring and boiling. And he was in a hurry. For according to Kachuka's calculations, they would reach Glenda's castle early in the morning. Ivan finally decided to stick to the Agree filter and the DDT blitz, which he already had. He made up a bowl of sparkling cherry soda into which he stirred the Agree filter. Then he poured the mixture into a fancy bottle. By the time he had prepared the concoction, the island was just settling down in Glenda's flower bed. Ivan yawned, stretched, rubbed his eyes, and got down to business. Hustling the sleepy king of Umbrella Island along with him, Ivan took his bottle of prepared Agree filter and a spray can of DDT fluid and made straight for the front door of Glenda's castle. It was not yet dawn, and the maid who answered the door was wearing a bathrobe and had her hair up and curly. She yawned crossly in Ivan's face. Ivan smiled his most charming smile. "I'm so sorry to disturb such a pretty young lady," he said, "but something urgent has happened. I must see Queen Ozma. Tell her we are from Umbrella Island." "I'll tell her," the maid yawned again, but less crossly. "Wait in the throne room." In a remarkably few minutes, Ozma and Glenda entered the throne room together. Ivan bowed his most courtly bow. Scissoroo nodded sleepily. "Your Majesties," Ivan began, "it is so good of you to see us so early in the morning. An emergency has arisen, hasn't it, Scissoroo?" Scissoroo blinked at his companion, but nodded obediently. "Oh, yes, an emergency has arisen," he agreed. "That is why we ventured to rouse you from your slumber. Scissoroo's Umbrella Island has been threatened, and it looks as though the danger may spread to Oz, doesn't it, Scissoroo?" Yes, it may spread to Oz." Ozma was frowning thoughtfully. She did not like the look of the red-robed young man who stood before her, but Scissoroo, of course, was an old friend, and she did not really doubt him. "Perhaps you'd better tell us what it is," she suggested. "I will, Your Majesty. But first, I ask you that you and the lovely Socialist Glenda drink with me in friendship, a drink which I have especially prepared for you." Ozma shook her head. "If danger threatens, as you say, we had better discuss that first and drink afterwards. But I have awakened you suddenly. You will be better able to cope with the emergency if you first have a refreshing drink. Don't you think so, King Scissoroo?" "Oh, yes. A refreshing drink, absolutely." Scissoroo nodded kindly at Ozma and added, "Ivan is King of the United States, you know. He understands how to deal with emergencies." Instantly, Ozma was on the alert. Unlike Scissoroo, she kept up with happenings in the United States. She knew quite well that the U.S. had no king. She turned quickly to Glenda. "Something is wrong, Glenda. Get your magic." But Ivan was too quick. Spraying first Glenda, then Ozma with DDT fluids, he ordered them into a corner of the room. "Your Majesties are in my power," he said angrily. "I have come to ask, to demand that Ozma marry me and make me King of Oz." "Never." Too weak from DDT fluids to even stand upright, Ozma nevertheless refused to accept Ivan's outrageous demands. "Then I will get some of Glenda's magic. If you still refuse to marry me, I will begin to destroy your subjects one by one, starting with Glenda herself." He swept out of the room, leaving Scissoroo on guard. At first, Ozma and Glenda attempted to reason with the perplexed king of Umbrella Island, but they soon realized he was under a spell and would follow Ivan's directions. Suddenly, the door swung open. Dorothy, Speedy, Johnny, and Pansy burst into the room, with Pickle squeaking the alarm as loudly as he could. "Ozma!" "Glenda!" Speedy cried. "Have you seen a man in a red suit?" Got that far when he realized that Scissoroo was there and was still under Ivan's enchantment. "He sprayed me with some sort of magic spray," Glenda said, quickly deciding to hold her many questions for a future, less stressful time. "It's in my laboratory right now," Glenda added. "He's trying to steal some magic." "Wrong," Ivan's voice boomed out at them. "I have already stolen it. I have a magic ruby here, which will turn an enemy into a jewel or a stone. I can get rid of my enemies with it and enrich myself at the same time," he boasted gleefully. Dorothy, Speedy, and Johnny wheeled around as Ivan entered. Ivan scowled at them. "So it's you. You've caused me enough trouble. I'm going to get rid of you first." Holding up the sparkling ruby, he began to recite the magic verse given in the direction. Once again, it was Pickle who came to the rescue. The tiny chameleon made a Herculean leap from Johnny's shirt pocket and landed splat across Ivan's stunned face. Pansy helped out by clawing at the scoundrel's ankles. Ivan could not possibly speak the required magic verse with a lizard splayed over his mouth and nose. As a matter of fact, he was too busy trying to shake off the furious pansy to do much of anything else. Dorothy and Speedy sprang forward, pinned his arms to his side, while Johnny rescued his sister's heroic pet from Ivan's now gaping jaws. Glenda and Ozma could not get past the watchful Scissoroo, but they began to call out loudly. Soon a company of palace servants poured into the room. In a few minutes, Ivan was tied up as tightly as a Christmas present. Explanations were almost impossible. Everyone was talking at once. At last, Speedy got through to Ozma and whispered a few words to her in her ear. Ozma, of course, did not have her magic belt with her, but she sent Speedy up with Glenda. So Glenda's magic laboratory. Soon Garita and Watty and even the huge Terry Bubble had been remembered and transported to Glenda's throne room. Everyone was excited and everyone was hungry. Glenda's servants prepared a huge breakfast with orange juice, pink apricot nectar, coffee, cocoa, 2 hot and 6 cold cereals, 3 kinds of eggs, toast and biscuits, bacon and sausage, waffles and pancakes, coffee cake and gooey cinnamon buns, and 5 different kinds of luscious red berries. Johnny had never eaten quite as much before in his life. Pickle had a specially prepared breakfast of 6 flies and a ladybug. Even Ivan was well fed, but in a different room, so that his presence could not support the party. Finally, Ozma held up her hand for silence. Watty has been telling me the story of the happenings on Umbrella Island. There are a few things still to be taken care of. Glenda has used a special spell to bring my magic belt and magic picture here so that I may use them. The belt, by the way, was lying on the floor beneath the magic picture. So Johnny guessed right, Dorothy. You didn't fasten it securely enough, and it came off when you and Speedy were transported so suddenly to Umbrella Island. First, Ozma continued, I don't think it would be fair to the United States to return Ivan there. He seems to want to be a king. So I have decided that he may be a king indeed, a king in a chess set. Ozma touched her magic belt, and Johnny, who had never before seen a transformation, tiptoed to the next room where Ivan had been eating. Ivan was already gone, but on the floor lay a small red marble king. Johnny picked it up and carried it back into the banquet hall, where the breakfasters passed it from hand to hand. Second, and here Ozma turned to Garita. Watty says that you have been blaming yourself for helping Ivan. Oh, yes, Garita wailed. I don't see how I could have done such a thing. It wasn't your fault. Ivan put you under a magic spell. You didn't really want to be engaged to him, did you, Garita? Speedy asked earnestly. Of course not, Speedy. As soon as the agreed filtre wore off, I told him so. That was when he shut me up in the dark room. You really want to be engaged to me, don't you, Garita? A rosy flush crept over Garita's face. Of course I do, Speedy. Johnny whispered to Dorothy under the cover of applause which followed. She sounds like she took another dose of that agreed filter. Ozma held up her hand and continued. King Scissoroo was also under a spell. I have put that right with the magic belt. Scissoroo got to his feet in great embarrassment. I shouldn't have helped Ivan, he apologized. He got me all mixed up, added the shamefaced king. The applause was less enthusiastic this time. Of course, Ozma continued, Watty, Pansy, Terry Bubble, and our own Princess Dorothy showed their bravery, as we have come to expect of them. This time, the applause was deafening. Johnny and Pickle, both in the United States, also helped a great deal, especially Pickle, shouted Johnny over the applause. Quite a few folks got up and came over to congratulate Pickle, who was now sitting on Dorothy's shoulder and had naturally turned a lovely lavender to manage her dress. Our old friend Speedy, Ozma went on, returned in time to help us and to help the people of Umbrella Island, where I believe he intends henceforth to make his home. Speedy and Garita, who were now sitting side by side holding hands, both nodded emphatically, and the applause swelled out once more. Terry Bubble added to it by rattling his bones with great enthusiasm. As the clapping died down, Scissoroo rose to his feet once more. My friends, he said with inspected dignity, I am sure that Speedy and my daughter will make much better rulers than I. And as soon as they have returned from their honeymoon, I intend to step down and turn over the running of Umbrella Island to them. The applause resounded once more. and Speedy had to step across to quiet Terry Bubble, who was showing signs of becoming dithyrambic. But most of all, Ozma continued, holding up her hand to the still the uproar. We must thank Pickle, who was twice the hero with his amazing leaps. Pickle, I want to award you our special Oz Medal for bravery before magic. Well, I did you something, said this modest chameleon, turning red in spite of being on Dorothy's shoulder. Ozma, said Johnny, who had been thinking rapidly during the commotion. Do you think I could ask a couple of favors? Of course, the little fairy queen smiled at him. Well, first, I think it's time for me to go home. My folks and my sister are probably worrying about me, and I miss them. It's not that we don't like it here, you understand. Of course we do, Dorothy assured it. What else, Johnny? Well, I think you had better keep Pickle here, because it would be sort of dull for him to go back to a country where he can't talk. But is there some way Lynn and I could see how he's doing once in a while? Certainly, Johnny. I think we could manage that. We'd like to care for Pickle, if that's all right with you, volunteered Speedy. We'll take good care of him, promised Garita. Besides, she said, smiling broadly at Terry Bubble, he really shouldn't be separated from his cousin. You want to go now? Ozma asked. Yes, please. Ozma smiled and touched her magic belt. Twice, Johnny felt himself swishing through the air. Suddenly he was home, sitting between his mother and father. Lynn was on his mother's lap. He would have thought it all had been a dream, but then something popped into his fist. It was a small marble. And when he looked inside it, he saw Pickle waving and grinning back at him. Ozma had kept her promise. And that is the end of Umbrella Island of Oz. I hope that you've enjoyed this story and that you will join us again for another installment of the 50th anniversary celebration of Oziana. Thank you very much for being with us today.